This is activity 3 in our unit on conic sections. This activity has 2 layers, and this video is about layer 2. Here's layer 1. We just finished drawing our circle, 3 points. We labeled those 3 points. And on layer 2, we have the same 3 points, but we don't have labels. With this layer, I'm going to do the same first step as I did with layer 1, and that is to fold this outside point so that it lines up with the point on the circle and crease. So this outside point here, which is point F, but it's not labeled that way, and I'm going to overlap that with point X and crease. That's exactly the same crease as I made on the previous video. Now, as with the previous activity, I'm going to imagine that there are points, in fact there are points, all the way around the circle here. I just haven't drawn in representative dots for those points. So there are points all the way around the circle, and I'm going to imagine folding point F so that it matches up not with X, but with a point very near X. So slide it along the circle a little bit, fold and crease. And then slide it along the circle a little bit more, fold again and crease. And just keep doing that all the way around the circle. You'll know, as you did with the ellipse activity, that you've reached the end of the circle, that you've folded all the way around the circle when your point F here overlaps point X again, having gone all the way around. I'm going to pause the video. I'll keep folding for a little while, and when I get to a part that's a little bit tricky, I'll come back and see how you're getting on. Okay, I've made some progress here. I'm not in any particular trouble yet, but I wanted to stop and show you that I'm still moving my point on the top sort of layer of paper here around so that it's on top of my circle before I make the next crease. And I'm getting to a point now where in the previous activity I started to run into a little bit of trouble because it was going to get difficult to see through previously made creases. That's a little bit less problematic here because my point is on the top layer. If I were to flip this over, you can see that I would be reaching a point where the folding was going to start to get difficult. It's not impossible, but it is getting a little bit more challenging because I can't quite as easily see the point through the back of the paper. Because I'm doing my folding from the other side this time, I can clearly see the circle underneath, and the point, which is just a single dot, which is harder to see to start with, that's on top. It's a bit more prominent, a feature, and so it's easier to see. You can see now that I'm folding over the previously creased area, but because the dot on top is not surrounded by creases, it's less of a problem. Just continuing to fold here, moving the dot so that it's along a little bit farther along the circle. So that it's always over the line I drew with the compass before I make the crease. As you can see, sometimes that's harder than others, but that's the critical thing, is to make sure that the dot is over the line, the curve actually. I'm starting to get into some trouble here because I'm having to rotate my paper sort of at a different angle now in order to make the dot land on top of the curve of the circle. It's okay, I just need to be careful. Looks like I may have unpaused the video at a very fortuitous time as it is. Now I'm getting to a place where it's really, really close. In fact, that's as close as I'm ever going to get. That fold is as close as I can get to the circle. And so that's probably going to be the hardest part right there. I'm also, as you can probably see, rapidly approaching the place where my point F is about to meet up with my point X again. And that's how I'm going to know that I'm done with this folding, because I've come all the way around the circle. X was the first point on the circle where I folded F on top of that point, and then I went in that direction and kept folding. I've just come up to X, and that's my last fold. It's actually my first fold all over again. So that's how I know I'm finished with my folding. Okay, so there's my layer 2. Let's go ahead and label it with a 2. Okay, and I think at this point I'm also going to encourage you to draw your pencil line in along the shape that you've drawn. This is what we did with the ellipse as well at this point. That's not perfect, but it's good enough. You'll notice I'm using a very fine pencil here, and when I do the darkening later on, I use a very, very fine Sharpie. And that's just so that my lines and curves, my features are more accurate. So here I've darkened in the shape just with a pencil for now, so that I can see it a little bit better, because I'm going to need that in the next step. But I want to point something else out here. It's not obvious, but this is only half of my shape. Let's go back to the ellipse just for a second, and let me remind you that as I darkened this in, I had an arc of my ellipse kind of hugging this middle point here, this point O, but the other end of it kind of hugged the point F. That's happening here as well, but because my second point F is outside my directing circle here, the shape that's hugging that outside point is pointing in the other direction. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see this curve hugging the point O, and this other piece of a curve hugging the point F. So that's my layer 2. That's it for now. I'm going to go back to layer 1 and add a few more features, but I need layer 2 in order to do that. So I'll stop this video and start a third video for that part.